Warren Doyle was probably the spearhead of it all. Um, I have to think if he talked about it ahead of time and maybe called. He probably did, because he was extemporaneous, but he was also a planner in some ways. And I knew there was something brewing because it just travels. You know how the information travels on the trail. That's, I think, how I heard. There's something going on, and you're probably going to hear about it pretty soon. And before I knew it, I heard from Warren, and he had the whole thing pretty much organized, who was going to be there, what was going to happen, and it all worked out, as we know, 25 years later. I enjoyed those meetings. That was more fun. And seeing everybody again over the years, how many more trails they hiked, how many more other people they got interested in the trail, and that's all wonderful history. I remember the consternation about what to call this group, and it went back and forth and back and forth, and somebody said a hiking society, and Dave Sherman came up with the long distance hikers, and then somebody else said not 2,000 milers, you can't just make it a 2,000 miler thing. And it went back and forth a few times, and I just sat there listening to all this wonderful planning, because it was fast. Everybody had something to say, and each person listened to the other person. They weren't thinking ahead what they were going to say to counteract the last statement. And I thought, this isn't going to take long at all. And before we knew it, they had Appalachian Long Distance Hikers Association. The first gathering, I took Clara Cassidy with me. And I remember somebody saying, "You're taking who?" And I was going to drive it myself. And I said, "Clara Cassidy." "She'll fall asleep. You won't have any companionship on that long, on that long drive." And I said, "I don't think so." Well, after we came back, she hadn't taken one little nap, coming or going. I said, "I have to tell you something funny that was said about you." And when I told her, she said, "Well, now you can go back and tell that person, then you won't tell me who it was, but you tell them I didn't take one little nap." And then she must have been a little older than I, and I'm 75, so she could have earned a nap. And the others, Dave Ritchie was there, and he was on a panel, if I remember correctly. There was a panel of different people that Warren wanted to get involved so that everyone there would know where these people were coming from in the plans for the trail conference and the trail itself, of course, and how ALDHA could fit into all that. The ice cream lady was there, Sam Waddell. The South Folk Life Center was a wonderful place to start, because we were a new fledgling organization meeting practically in the woods or out in the open. This place was a wonderful opportunity for the beginning. The way I see it, it was like a genesis. And there were a lot of people there that had good ideas, and they came out at the time. And I think some of those ideas just stayed with ALDHA all those years, because hearing them first, you know, all these years ago, 25 years ago, and knowing that it's still the foundation of what ALDHA is, was established then. And it hasn't changed, and that's the glamour of this, if you can call it glamour. It's the wonderful thing about the organization. It just has kept Warren Doyle's initial dream and plan for such an organization has just kept it alive. And I know we understand that like minds stick together, and that's what's happened. This is a proven prophecy, if you want to call it that it has succeeded because nobody has tried to change it. At least not that I know of. I perhaps think Warren might have had some battles back and forth once in a while, but good always wins, and it did in this case. The gatherings changed over the years in numbers, attendance. It got bigger and bigger, and there were, I remember basically taking more and more things to sell since that was part of my job with ATC at the time. I was having a good time as a member of ALDHA, but I also had my job. And I sold each year, the sales increased. And I'm sure that there were a lot of hikers there who had never seen our publications till they came to the ALDHA meeting. And so ATC benefited a great deal. And membership, of course. You know, I sold memberships right and left. In fact, I don't think I let them out of the room until they signed up. The first meeting, George and I felt like we were privileged citizens. We were in a small cottage, no electricity, hardly any light. Windows were sparse, but we got a bed, and we thought, oh, this is wonderful. And we got in the bed, and we both went to the middle. But Warren did his best, and in order to take a shower, you had to have a flashlight, and there was hardly any water, but it all worked out beautifully, and we were just so pleased to be there. That was fun, and I never told him that. But there was a madhouse fire that night, a gathering around a fire, and people sang and had a ball, and I don't know how late we were there, but eventually everything died down and got into business the next day. I have some wonderful memories, and then at the school, we were always very comfortable and had plenty to eat. And you'd meet these students who would take a look at you and say, you know, where are all these people from? What do you do? And try to explain to a student who knows nothing about the Appalachian Trail what all these people are there for. And I'd say, come over to the meeting. You'd probably enjoy it, and check out the sales desk and see what we have for sale. It was wonderful watching Warren and Albie Pokrob do their seasonal. They had a name for it. They played with a frisbee, the Great Frisbee Game, or whatever, spin-off. And we all stood around and watched that until they never tired. We would just decide, well, okay, we've seen them have a good time with the frisbee. The meetings were always very, very well organized. Warren always had great entertainment. The fellow with the guitar that came from far and wide and had hiked miles and miles and miles back and forth. Walking Jim Stoltz. He was always invited to entertain us, and it was a great opportunity to just hear somebody else's experiences on trails everywhere through music, and most of it was his own compositions. And sometimes there would be, we had cloggers from the school down around that area, and boy, they had everybody clogging. I mean, they were on the stage, but afterwards we all just broke up and did our own little clogging out in the halls and so forth. And then there were hoedowns, that's what I always called them. And I remember going around and around and around Cindy Ross, and she hadn't met Todd by then, I don't think. It was a little while after that. But she was there, and Dave Ritchie. I would see hikers at ALDHA who were in between in the middle of their hike, because they'd always get off the trail to come to the meetings. And some of the stories I heard about hikers getting there, hitchhiking and riding, and down there in Virginia, when it was down at Concord College, there were a lot of farms, you know, coming and going near the trail. And they would always have hitched rides with farmers, sometimes in the back of the trucks with pigs or cows. But they'd get there, and that said a lot about these people who really